There's a lot going on in the world, and I'm going to cover it all. The resumption of the war in Gaza by Israel, the threats of the Houthis, the launch allegedly of missiles by the Houthis at Israel. It appears to me that President Trump's getting ready to hammer Iran. President Trump talked to Putin today. We've got Judge Bosley and the deportees. We've got the impeachment conversation with the Chief Justice. We've got a lot to go on. But I want to tell you about something I did this morning. Now, the background of this is I never, ever go to listen to interviews. I do interviews. And so I don't like to go to interviews. I go to speeches, I go to concerts, I go to sporting events. Don't go to interviews because I'm pretty good at this. I stopped counting at 25,000 interviews. That doesn't count phone calls. I've just done tens of thousands of interviews. And El Rushbo paid me the ultimate compliment to President Trump. I wasn't at the lunch, but I was told by the third party there that I'm the best in the business at this. So I kind of take it seriously. I like a good interview. I watch them. If I don't like them, I turn them off, but I don't go to them. It takes a lot of time. But this morning, I drove down to Newport Beach, California to hear an interview because the greatest of all time was being interviewed, Jack Nicklaus. And he was being interviewed by my friend Hank Adler, who's a co-author of mine. Wrote a book on the fair tax fantasy with Hank a decade and a half ago. The only person I've ever co-written a book with, but Hank's an accountant. He's a professor at Chapman, and he's a golfer, and he's raised a lot of money for years. There's a picture, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, of Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters in 1986. But can we show the picture of the event, Harley? I want to show a picture of Hank and Jack Nicklaus. So I'm down there, and Jack Nicklaus is 85 years old. And Hank's 10 years older than me, but he's not 85. I didn't know what to expect. Jack Nicklaus was fabulous. I mean, what a professional. And Hank, I went up to Hank's wife, who I've known for a long time. I said, please tell Hank, as a professional, he did a wonderful job. Because the temptation for people who don't do this for a living is to step on stories and to rush and not to allow their guest the opportunity to talk and to stop their guest when they're pausing to build up to a point. None of that happened. It was a perfect interview. Now, there's a fundraiser for Hoag Hospital System down in Newport Beach. And it's a Balboa Bay Club, very famous place where lots of Los Angeles used to sail, and I think Humphrey Bogart sailed out of the Balboa Bay Club. I'm not sure. Famous place, though. I did not know, Jack Nicklaus is from Columbus. He's a Buckeye. He's like Urban Meyer. He's one of those Buckeyes who's legendary all over among every Buckeye. So I'd go just because it was Jack Nicklaus, but he also happens to be the greatest golfer ever lived. There aren't many people about whom you can say declaratively, that's the guy. That's the GOAT. 18 major championships. By the way, he's also one of the greatest golf course designers in history. He's designed 425 golf courses. And I knew he was a good guy. Everyone has always told me that, but I've never heard him in person. I don't watch golfing interviews because they get too much into the golf and not enough into the person. He's been married 65 years to his wife, Barbara. I believe he's got, 24 great-grandchildren. He's got some tragedy in his life. He lost a grandson to drowning. He talked a little bit about that. His big charity, he lives in Miami now, is the Nicklaus Children's Hospital, for which they've raised $210 million over 20 years. Hey, you big tech billionaires, there's a place to give a lot of money to because they take care of a lot of people. Barbara is well known for being a saint in Ohio. I'm sure if Coach Urban is listening to this, he knows him. I had known that Woody Hayes was a friend of his dad. I knew that Woody Hayes had to be restrained when the first Arnie and Jack showdown, I think at Thunderbird was the tournament, that Woody was walking around with Nicklaus Sr. and Arnie's Army was heckling the young kid from Ohio State. I did not know that he learned to play. I love this story. This is the kind of story I love. I am a terrible golfer. I'm a great caddy. So I played a lot of golf as a kid, but I caddied more. And I know what it's like to be, Jack Nicklaus talked about walking through a stranger's backyard at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning every day, all summer long, to go tee off before 8, because junior golfers are allowed to tee off before 8 and after 4. And so he always did the same shortcut. I did that. And hitting a bucket of balls. And if you belong to a country club, the bucket of balls is not free. They send your dad a bill. So his dad said he was a pretty good all-around athlete. He played baseball, football, basketball. But golfing, he could control. It was up to him. Didn't depend on his teammates, so he decided he was going to be a golfer. So Jack Grout was his pro. I've never heard this before. And Jack Grout, they do a group lesson for kids. It's common everywhere. And he hits the ball well, and Jack Grout takes an interest in him. So you should hit some more balls. So Jack Nicklaus starts hitting balls when he's 10 or 12 years old. His dad gets the monthly bill for a bucket of balls at 35 cents a bucket. $380. He'd hit 1,000 buckets of ball in a month. All right, that's kind of an indication that he's serious about it. Day after he turned pro, he'd won the U.S. Amateur a couple of times. He's the Golden Bear coming out of Ohio. Everybody in Ohio knows about Jack Nicklaus. We all love Jack Nicklaus. He's like St. Jack and St. Urban and St. LeBron. There are people for whom you just have enormous respect because they're Buckeyes. And he got a letter the day after he turned pro from Bobby Jones down in Atlanta. I got a friend, Glenn, who used to practice at the firm where Bobby Jones was a partner. And Bobby Jones said, I'm sorry you're turning amateur. I was kind of hoping you'd do what I did. But by the way, I have a relationship with Spalding. He was getting sold by Bobby Jones to sponsor with Spalding. That was pretty funny. He talked about playing Firestone. He talked about playing with people whose names you won't know. Sam Snead, Byron Nelson, Julius Burroughs, kids, guys who were old men when I was growing up, I'd watch. And he talked about the concession, which is a famous thing, with Tony Jacklin at the Ryder Cup. Tony Jacklin was the British Open champion, and Jack picks up his coin. Jack, we're showing a little video here from YouTube. Jack drains his putt, and then the Ryder Cup is tied, and Tony Jacklin has a putt to make. And Jack Nicklaus realizes if he misses that putt, the British press will never let him alone. So it's called the concession. And it's a very famous moment in golf, if you love golf. And then he talked about building the memorial. And the memorial is his golf course in Columbus. And how he wanted to give something back to Columbus because Columbus gave so much to him. He's a real Buckeye. He's dotted the I on the Buckeye. And so it was just a fabulous thing. And it's so rare to run into a person who is authentically everything you want them to be, authentically a great super champion who talked with love and dignity about Gary Player and Arnie Palmer. He said those three were such buddies that when one of them had a bad round, they knew for sure that their two buddies would be there waiting for them outside their locker to say, hey, you had a pretty good round today, didn't you? That was the way they went about the game. And he talked about Hank Adler asked him a great question. You're known as being a gentleman. So well, my dad taught me when you lose, you go up to the man that you lost to, shake his hand, look him in the eye, and said, you were the better player today. Congratulations. You can go kick a locker later if you want, but don't ever be clueless or classless. And he talked about Barbara, his wife, like every husband should talk about every spouse. It's just amazing. And he talked about winning the Masters in 1986, why he wore a yellow shirt. I had missed this. He wore a yellow shirt because of a young man named Craig who died of sarcoma. They became friends with, and Craig always told him to wear a yellow shirt for good luck, and he found it on that day. He started out 8th on the board. Masters was coming up in April. Whenever they start playing March Madness, I start looking forward to the Masters. I'm not a big college hoops guy. I watch the Final Four, but I don't watch the 64 and the 32 and the 16. But I do watch the Masters every year. Said if he could play one round of golf, he'd play Pebble Beach. Talked about embarrassing himself in front of Bing Crosby. He told stories. This is what I really credit Hank with doing. He told stories that people wanted to hear. It's like playing your greatest hits at a concert. John Andrazik of Five for Fighting told me, you don't go to a Five for Fighting concert and not play Superman in 100 years. That's what the crowd wants to hear. So he told some old stories. But man, I hadn't heard the Masters story before from Jack Nicklaus. So I had a treat this morning. I just want to say, amid all this war and trouble, amid all these woes and terrible things, there are still some genuine professionals who do things the right way and he was there to raise money for a hospital. Jack Nicklaus doesn't need anyone's applause. He talked about how he raised $210,000, $2,100,000 by auctioning off 3 rounds of golf. He didn't say where it was going to be, but he said, we're going to play at Lost Tree. You'll love Lost Tree. It was Augusta. And he took 3 groups of people, $700,000 a group, to raise $2.1 million for the Nicklaus children family. This is a guy who's a good man. And there are a lot of bad people in the world. You run into a good man who also happens to be the greatest at what he ever did. That's a good morning. Noah Rothman is the National Review's senior political writer, weekly guest of mine. Hello, Noah. Quite a lot going on. I wanted you to comment specifically about a couple of things. Over the weekend, Donald Trump hit the Houthis hard. Apparently, no one told the Houthis that the Biden regency was over. And so he hit them hard. And then last night, Israel resumed the war against Gaza, thus far only from the air, no reports of ground troops. So that's not changed yet today. What do you think is unfolding? Is it possibly, as I heard on commentary speculated by Jonathan Shanzer this morning, that we're getting close to the end game with Iran and that Trump and Bibi are going to finish off the nuclear program?
Well, Jonathan's assessment, I can't necessarily speak to. I certainly hope he's right. I do think it's impossible to separate the Trump administration's strikes on the Houthis with the promise that it is a sustained campaign from the resumption of hostilities in Gaza. We're talking about 2 Iranian proxies, both of which operate at the beneficence and the behest of Iran. And you cannot distinguish the Iranian apparatus from the terrorist organizations in its orbit. That's the head of the snake. You know, you can go after all these various proxy organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Shiite militias in Iraq and Jordan, and the Houthis and Iran. And as I said on the editors today, Iran hasn't been weaker than it is now since the 1979 revolution. This is the opportunity to maximize the groundwork that the Israelis have done in degrading all the arms through which Iran could mete out some sort of a retaliation for example, strikes that aim to neutralize, if not seriously degrade, the Iranian nuclear program. The time is now, and the president seems rather torn, frankly, when he talks about this subject. Sometimes he says, this is a message to Iran, as he said last night with these strikes. Other times he entertains the notion of a new JCPOA-like Iran nuclear deal, which I understand is tempting, but I think is a folly, a pursuit that is unlikely to yield results. So time will tell. It's certainly way overdue to reimpose some deterrence on the Houthis. But the way to deter conflict is to deter conflict. That's to present the enemy with conditions that suggest you will not be able to absorb the amount of pain we can mete out. You will not achieve your goals militarily. We should be applying that lesson broadly. Right now, we're applying it to the Iranians. Long overdue, but I look forward to seeing more signs that this administration is as committed to neutralizing this threat.
I want to add a little context here. The Iranian Revolution to which Noah refers occurred in 1979 when the Shah was overthrown by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Since that time, there have been only 2 supreme rulers, Khomeini and Khamenei. They both held the same job. Khamenei took over when Khomeini died in 1989. The only time it's been weaker than right now was probably in the aftermath of Operation Praying Mantis when Ronald Reagan sunk the Iranian Navy in 1988 when they began the tanker war and they pulled their way back. But that was before the IRGC, before this ring of fire. And systematically over 7 months, Israel, not with a great deal of help from us, they got a bear hug from us, but not everything they needed. They decimated Hamas. They've destroyed Hezbollah. Assad is gone, and Iran has been defenestrated of its air defenses. And I think the Houthis got hit pretty hard a couple of times by the Israelis and a couple of times by the Americans. But as I understand, and Senator Cotton put it yesterday, Noah, what the president said when he first came is, we can do this the hard way or the easy way, Iran, but we're going to do it. You can either lock down your nuclear weapons program, as did South Africa and Ukraine. You can denuclearize, or we can denuclearize for you. And Tom Cotton left the impression with me, and I think it's correct. And I think Khamenei thinks it's correct as well. They don't get a choice about whether or not they do it. They're going to do it. It's just they get a choice about how to do it.
Yeah, I think so. The nuclear disarmament conversation, I think, is instructive insofar as the South African model, the Ukrainian model, and to a lesser extent the Brazilian model, Argentinian model, is that the security environment in their regions changed dramatically In South Africa's case, it was domestic change in its regime and the subsequent posture of the neighboring states, the collapse of the Soviet Union, détente in South Africa, or South America. These are the sort of things that can convince a regime to abandon a nuclear weapons program peacefully. I don't think that option is on the table for Iran. I think its region is going to remain hostile from its perspective. And also the Praying Mantis example, as you mentioned, Operation Praying Mantis, and the Soleimani strike to a lesser extent.
Yes.
Both of them demonstrate a truism that the Iranian regime, elements within the Iranian regime, react with existential terror whenever they are faced with the prospect of a real hot conflict with the United States. Those elements within the regime understand that they would not survive such a conflict. And they react by de-escalating. It's a, escalate to de-escalate strategy. It's the sort of thing that works with Iran. It doesn't necessarily work everywhere. It does work with Iran, and Iran cannot be allowed to have a bomb. It has.
No, I think it's going to happen, and fairly quickly. Do you?
I don't know. I think now is the time to do it. I'm hesitant to say that there are elements within this administration. I know there are elements within the administration that want to do it. I know there are elements within the administration that regard it as so reckless that it cannot even be envisioned, especially given the degree to which America's focus should be on the Pacific, not in the Middle East, not in Europe. So that debate, I think, is raging within the administration. I don't know where it's going.
I'm counting on Rubio and Waltz persuading the president to go with his instincts. Let me ask you about Judge Boasberg. I haven't heard the new editors. I'll listen to that this afternoon. But the last editors, when you and Dominic were talking about this, and Dominic and I had an exchange on X, I try and be gentlemanly about this. But this is in my opinion, non-justiciable political question that the judge ought to punt to the D.C. Circuit, dismiss, and allow the ACLU to take up to the circuit. If they want to get involved, they can get involved, and the court can decide. I don't like this district court judge eating up precious time of the President of the Department of Justice by ordering answers to questions that are classified. I don't like anything about this. The Article 3 power is separate from the Article 2 power. I'm wondering what you thought of that hearing yesterday. I really think this judge ought to back off, dismiss the case, and if they want to take it up to the circuit's got more gravitas. It's got better judges, longer serving judges. Good. This guy's a good judge, by the way. He's a lefty, but he's a good judge. He's the chief judge of the district, but he's a district court judge. He should not be screwing around in this area.
Well, everybody wants this fight. I'm disinclined to wade into legal precedent. That's not my field. However, I'm familiar with the 1948 decision on this 1798 law, which regards it, as far as I understand it, as a non-justiciable issue when the president or his officers want to remove people citing this law, that it's non-justiciable in the condition in which the Congress has declared war. It was invoked 3 times.
Yeah, that is not actually, it's a case of first impression. It's never been decided before because that was predicated by a declaration of war. This is predicated by a declaration of the president, which is provided for in the statute, but has never before been used. So it's zone 1 under Justice Jackson's 3 zones, but it's never been decided before.
Yeah, and the Trump administration wants clarity from this, from the Supreme Court and appellate courts, and they might get it. I can't speak to the law on this issue. I can speak to the politics of it. The politics of it are that the administration clearly wants a fight over this. They are sound ground with the public when it comes to immigration. All the policies that pollsters have tested with regard to Trump, immigration gets the highest marks. Voters are appreciative of the restoration of some sanity to our border enforcement regime and our immigration regime. That said, when you start to pick fights with the courts and allege, as Caroline Leavitt has alleged and Pam Bondi has alleged, that this judge in particular has a soft spot for criminality and gang criminality, I think you're going to start to see the president run up against procedural arguments.
No, there is a story that perhaps there is a United States citizen among those who were deported. That would be a massive, terrible political error if they screwed that up, because you can't deport an American citizen. So I'm going to stipulate that, and I assume you agree. What do you make of the analogy that they're sending the TDAs, Venezuelans, to El Salvador with MS-13? It's like sending the Nazis, it's like sending Wehrmacht troops to the Soviet Union. I mean, they're not coming back. I'm not real comfortable with that either. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty grim analogy that you drew there.
Isn't it on point?
I understand it.
They're gangs.
Well, there hasn't. I'm uncomfortable with the degree to which the administration shot first and asked questions later. It doesn't seem to have done the due diligence to actually charge these alleged gang members. much less allow them due process their hearings for pre-deportation. And yeah, that could start to get really sticky because initially you're going to issue these arguments to say the judge is out over his skis, his sympathies are suspect, try to make a big political argument there, but eventually you have to argue with the courts on the court's terms and make a legal argument that satisfies a judge. And when you do that, you are going into process. And the old political shibboleth is that when you're going into process, when you're talking process, you're losing because your opponent gets to boil his message down into a single sentence, something that's emotionally satisfying and gratifying and hard to argue with, like the administration has subverted due process rights here in pursuit of a political objective. Boom, simple, really easy sentence, the sort of thing that you can latch onto, as opposed to what the administration is going to have to say. And I fear that the administration will get bogged down in process arguments and eventually end up losing some of the strength of his core strength here.
It's interesting. I'm worried about
bread and butter.
I don't think they're going to lose the process arguments. I think they're going to be facts that develop after the conclusion of the legal, long after the law stuff is over, which will be done within a couple of weeks. We're going to find out what happened to these people. And
I mean, Democrats do need a sympathetic. They need, yeah, it does, and they do need a sympathetic figure around whom they can rally. Mahmoud Khalil is not going to get the job.
No.
They do need somebody who. They need somebody who is sympathetic to the majority of Americans, and deporting a citizen or a green card holder absent their due process rights really could do the trick.
Well, due process green card holders do not have due process rights in the way that citizens do, but sending someone to their death, that would be bad. Noah, thank you. Follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman. Talk to you next week, Noah. Ty Lassiter joins me. Ty is a friend. He's a client of the program as well. And for my new listeners, especially on the Beacon in the Hudson Valley, New York, WGHQ, WLNA, WBNR, whenever I have a client on, I always disclose that. I always tell you I'm an investor in Key City Capital. It's for qualified investors only. It's a real estate investment. It has risk. You should get the prospectus before you invest. They're looking for 6 figures or more. I used to say you can't get into the fund I'm in, but I'm not sure if that's true anymore, Ty. Is that true anymore?
That is correct. It is still true. That fund is closed except for existing investors.
Okay. So why don't you tell, especially our new listeners in the Hudson Valley, what Key City Capital does? And we don't make recommendations, but I bring Ty in to talk to me about real estate because most Americans love a good real estate story.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to talk to you. It's been a couple of months since I've talked to you. So a lot has changed. Good afternoon instead of morning as usual. But
yeah, I know.
What we specifically do, and now could not be a better chance. There's been about $11 billion in the first quarter taken net out of the stock market right now. And we're just a counter-correlated property or product to the stock market. You hear Warren Buffett talk all the time about having investments that are counter-correlated to each other that offer upside where there's risks in other investments and vice versa. And so with real estate, we focus on partnering with investors so that they can get the benefit of owning real estate, the tax benefits of owning, the equity benefits of owning real estate, the physical asset and the physical dirt that comes with real estate. And then we take care of all the headaches, the termites, toilets, and fires, if you will, is what we often refer to. And so that way investors can take opportunities where cash flow exists on investments like real estate, watch their investment grow, and then see the actual physical investment itself, and then not have to deal with all those problems where we step in and manage those things for our investors.
Now, I always underscore, I'm not an investment advisor. I tell people I'm really boring. I'm diversified. I have some precious metals. I have some dirt with Ty. I've got some mutual funds. I've got cash. I've got bonds. I've got stocks. And I'm boring, and I don't touch them. I don't trade. But then I get questioned, how do you get into real estate if you don't buy a house, then rent it? And that guy said, well, you get into a limited partnership like Key City Capital runs. How many different people do you think are investors in the various funds that Key City Capital runs, Ty?
So we have about 650 investors across the United States and then a few in other countries as well. And the benefit of that is we bring volume, and with volume comes scalability. Whereas when I first got started 20 years ago, I was using my own money for about a decade, and eventually you run out of your own capital. And that's where partners come into and bring the opportunity. Now we can look at bigger deals, bigger opportunities. They do come with bigger problems, but they come with more diversification. So we open a fund, investors come into a fund, and instead of owning one single property where you have single investment risk, we'll purchase 5, 10, or 12 properties within a fund, and all the investors have carte blanche ownership across each of those properties, and diversifies risks. It diversifies upside opportunities and things like that.
But it limits risk as well. You're not on the hook. You're not a general partner. It's the you're just in for the amount of money that you put in. But that is at risk. I want to tell people. Now, tell me generally about real estate under Donald Trump. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. I'm already seeing a repeat of what happened the last time he was in office. And so, what we're seeing is, first of all, you've got an active real estate investor that's sitting in the White House. And so he is pushing business in the United States, which helps our product. The tariffs do come with issues, but with that comes opportunity. He's bringing jobs back to the United States. It's pushing our asset class. It's creating opportunity around investment properties, rental properties. And so what we're seeing right now is a large number of investors moving capital out of the stock market where there's a lot of expectation of a market correction, and they're moving capital into assets that have a physical aspect to them, like real estate. And so the first time Trump came into office, we raised about $300 million. We're looking to do about $400 million this time around. There's huge opportunities hitting the marketplace right now, and we are already looking to snatch a number of those up.
And I want to make sure I tell my friends in Blue, New York, in the Hudson Valley, keycitycapital.com/Hugh, keycitycapital.com/Hugh. They buy their properties in red states. They're in Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and a few other places, but they're red state builders. They own their apartments and their properties, their rentals that you become a joint venture in, a limited partner in red states. You haven't done any blue state stuff, Ty. You haven't gone crazy on me, have you?
No, we haven't. We have owned in blue states before. We've owned in Colorado, but we focus on landlord-friendly states. And with landlord-friendly states, it's typically a red state.
Keycitycapital.com/Hugh. If you're interested in investing in dirt, people ask me, how do you do that? That's how you do it. But you got to be a qualified investor. Read the prospectus. Be careful. Keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Join me there. The war is resumed in Israel. Donald Trump has brought the wood to the Houthis. And Judge Boasberg is in the middle of a controversy, which, if I were him, I would punt as a political question non-justiciable to the circuit. But what does David Drucker think about all that? Drucker with the Dispatch. Hello, David. What do you think?
Well, listen, it's pretty standard for the judicial and the executive to disagree, sometimes vehemently so. So I think it's just a part of the system, and in a way, it's healthy to see both sides sticking up for the power that they believe the Constitution gives them.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think that the judiciary wins. I'm a judiciary guy. And a district court taking on the President's Department of Justice is not, if he wants to dismiss the case as a political question and let the D.C. Circuit fight it out with the president, or maybe the Supreme Court, fine. But I don't think it's good for the courts to try and second guess deportations of TDAs and MS-13s. What do you think the president is up to with the Houthis? Do you think the big hammer is coming for Tehran?
Well, that's a good question. The president likes sort of isolated but big military strikes, if you will, and or what's a good way to put this? When you look at the assassination of Soleimani, it was an isolated,
dramatic,
sort of one-time event, but a big event. So that's sort of what we're used to with him. I mean, the question is he willing to expand this to more explicitly take on Tehran? And that's a really good question. One I don't have the answer to, but I think it's sort of an interesting juxtaposition for him because he really prefers to reduce U.S. commitments and leadership around the world. But as he did in his first term, he seems comfortable expanding U.S. influence over Middle East affairs.
What Senator Cotton told me yesterday is that the message the president sent to Khamenei is we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. You can take down your nuclear program and let us prove it in the way that South Africa was proven to have denuclearized, or we can bomb you from the skies, no troops on the ground. We got cruise missiles on the USS Georgia. We got B-52s, the F-35s, and the F-16s from Israel came waltzing around here. You didn't. We can do it harder. We can do it easy, but we're going to do it. And I don't think he cannot not do it now, David. That's what I think. He's actually put himself in a box.
Well, I agree with you in that if he's going to make these overt, I don't like the word threat. It makes it sound negative. I mean, look, from the standpoint of the United States, stopping Iran from being nuclear weapons capable of fielding and delivering is a major priority. But if the president says you've got either one way or the other way, then he's going to have to deliver the other way. What I would tend to think, if you press me, is that Iran is not going to give up its nuclear weapons just because of a threat from the United States, because they've been willing to subjugate their regime and their economy for decades into, I don't want to say the dark ages, but I mean, Iran could flourish as a nation. The mullahs there prefer things the way they are.
But the difference, David, Hezbollah it's not gone, but it's a shadow of what it was. Syria is gone. The Kurds and the Druze are up in arms against the Sunnis, but the Shia are down and out in Syria. The Houthis are under attack. And Israel's danced a jig on top of Iran's head twice in the last 17 months. It's not like their aura, whatever they persuaded themselves they could deter.
Right, but if they stand down on this, then they have potential domestic problems, because they rule by the threat of the sword internally.
All they have are
right?
guns for their own people. But they have that.
Their citizenry are not happy with them, and the minute they acquiesce, then it's going to open a whole other can of worms for them. I'm hoping. Listen, one way or the other, I'm hoping it gets done. I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective. They've never done the rational thing, or rarely.
Yeah, let me ask you a very non-journalistic question. You've interviewed the president. Sure. You've spent time with him. How does he seem to you right now? Because he seems to me about as comfortable in the job as I've ever seen him.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. I mean, he's functioning as a politician who knows what he wants, feels like he knows how to get it, and in what you notice in this term, 8 weeks in versus most of the first term, is that he understands the levers of power. Right? People can agree or disagree over how he's utilizing them.
But he gets it.
But he knows
he's a strong and confident president right now. And when he first got into office, Jim Comey, let's be friends, he was a developer. Now he's a strong and confident president who's been there before, and he really knows who his friends are, or thinks he knows who his friends are, and he thinks he knows who his enemies are, and he's not putting up with the latter at all. Last question, David. What's the mood around the Beltway? I don't know if you went to the Gridiron. I am frankly shocked that they did not toast the president for the first time in the history of the Gridiron. I am. I'm just shocked. That's a breakdown in basic Beltway civility.
Well, listen, I mean, Trump, this puts me in the position of defending the media. But listen, I mean, Trump is a more combative, belligerent politician than most. And so a lot of these norms have broken down on both sides. Look, I think the mood in the Beltway is what you'd expect. I mean, some people are really concerned and upset. Other people are really happy and excited. And, as a reporter, I'm just trying to make sense of what matters and what doesn't. The president, who I cover pretty regularly right now, says lots of things that don't matter, but then does and says lots of things that actually do matter. And I spend most of my time trying to figure out which is which.
Well, and I usually don't do media criticism. I don't care. But not toasting the head of state after a tradition that's gone on for years, that's a significant break. And to me, it tells me it's not normal. Media is breaking. Legacy media is broken. I don't expect you to say anything about that. David M. Drucker on X. Thank you, David. With the Dispatch, always a pleasure to see you. Donald Trump had a great time at the Kennedy Center gaggle yesterday, and he promised more on the auto pen. Cut number 2.
Have you yourself ever used AutoPen, sir?
Yeah, only for very unimportant papers. And I don't call them unimportant. If you do letters where people write in and, they'd love to have a response, or we'll write responses, and I'll sign them whenever I can. But when I can't, I, would use an AutoPen. But to use them for what they've used them for is terrible.
And then Chuck Schumer went on The View. This guy's in so much trouble. He has to go to The View. Cut number 12.
So a lot of people responded to the anguish. I appreciate it. I wake up 3 a.m. sometimes so worried about the future of the country under these oligarchs or
Does anyone believe that? Does anyone believe that? It's just so stupid. Cut number 13, more Chuck Schumer.
This is a different, horrible kettle of fish. They hate the government. They want to shut down everything. You heard what Musk
All
said.
right, now I got something to tell
$2 trillion.
You know why Jack Nicklaus stopped playing golf? He didn't say this. Because he used to be great. He was the greatest ever. And now he's not. And he doesn't like. It's why I don't play golf. I'm so bad at it. Even I was bad at it forever, but I'm so bad at it now I don't play golf because I can remember when I wasn't so bad that I couldn't break 100. But now I'm so bad I can't break 100, so I don't play anymore. Chuck Schumer, you're so bad at this. Stop. Just stop. All right, you know what you can start? You can start giving to Food for the Poor. Every year in Lent, I run a campaign and I ask you if $100 or $200 or $300 if you can afford it to feed the children. Food for the Poor feeds the children. And the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com says, feed their future. Listen to Carla talk about the kids of El Salvador where she's on the ground.
Because El Salvador ranks as one of the top 10 most vulnerable countries worldwide. So the well-being of the most vulnerable population is always threatened on a yearly basis. We understand this is going to be a recurrent problem in El Salvador. So having your support give us a lot of confidence that we can face struggles and support this vulnerable population without delays.
Now they do such a fine job. Started with a handful of priests. Then they just brought in all the pastors from all the different churches. Now they work with any legitimate agency that will feed kids in school. They do rice and beans. They're not fancy stuff. You don't have to invent a wheel. You don't have to start a new charity. All you have to do is send money to Food for the Poor. You can do it 3 ways. You can text my name, Hewitt, to 51555, HEWITT to 51555. Or you can phone it right now, 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-4673. Just during Lent, I ask you to do this. I raise money 4 times a year. Food for the Poor, twice for Angel Tree Kids, once in the fall for Food for the Poor as well. But during Lent, always Food for the Poor. Feed their future banners at the top of HughHewitt.com. That's the quickest, safest, easiest way to do it. Joined by Brett Baer. He is host of Special Report. You can watch him on Fox News. I think he's America's most watched newsman. Brett, I got a question for you that is not newsy I want to begin with. I have a request, actually. You are a great interviewer. I take some pride in my interviews, Scott. Have you ever sat down with Jack Nicklaus?
I have, several times.
I watched him interviewed this morning. I normally won't go to watch anybody interview someone who's not a professional. He's amazing. What a storyteller. Did you have fun with those?
Oh, yeah, really fun. I had him on the show, and we talked about all kinds of stories. You know, I'm a Jack Nicklaus super fan, and I learned to play golf by Golf My Way, the VHS tape that he did based on his book. And long story short, I sent him a letter after watching the documentary Jack, and he and his wife Barbara's support of children's health and about his career. And I wrote him a letter. A couple weeks later, he wrote me back and asked me to interview him at a charity event. And, you know, my entire golf career came up through Jack Nicklaus, so I knew every little fact. So it was really fun doing interviews with him.
I knew about the concession. Of course, I watched the Masters in '86 live. I didn't know about the yellow shirt being in honor of the young boy who died of the sarcoma. But what I learned today is the first time he went and hit balls at 35 cents a bucket at his club, and his dad got a bill for $380. I thought, that's pretty damn funny. And, you know, that's not something an amateur normally will get out of people. Did you make it into a special for the Fox channel?
Yeah, we did a big interview segment. I also did something for PGA Reach, which is a charity event for kids and then for veterans. So Yeah, we've used it on air. He's a great storyteller. And, I was at the 86 Masters.
Oh, I did not know that.
And I followed him from 15 on to 18.
Did you hear, was it Seve dropped it in the water and he knew that
Yeah.
he told that story this
groan.
morning. There's some people are good at this and telling stories about golf games, and some people are bad. I'm a bad golfer, so I like hearing good golfers tell good golf stories. And I was really blown away today by him. Of course, he's an Ohio guy, and he's a Columbus guy, and Woody Hayes is part of his life, really part of his life. And so, like Urban Meyer, I love talking to these people. In St. Barbara, I want to meet his wife, but I didn't know about the Nicklaus Children's Hospital in Miami. I had no idea until this morning. He raised $2.1 million at a dinner by auctioning off a round of golf. He said, we're going to play at, I don't know, what he made up some course name. He took 3 groups to Augusta. That would be a lot. He called it Lost Tree, and they bid $700,000 each. And I said, that's pretty good. And I like the guy. Let's get to the serious stuff now. I'm going to go find that interview it's got to be on YouTube, right? You talking?
Yeah, I'll get it. I'll get it to you.
So, the judge in D.C. I think this is a non-justiciable political question that ought to dismiss and allow the circuit to decide whether they want to tangle with the president. What are your experts? Because you got Turley and you got McCarthy, 2 best guys in the game. I spent a year with a political question once, so I know my way around it. But this is an unprecedented case. There is absolutely nothing on the books remotely like this, never been invoked by declaration of the president before. What do you think as a very informed layman talking to the very best experts?
Yeah. John Yoo was on our air. There have been others. Mark Levin has weighed in. And obviously you mentioned the other guys. I think there's 2 sides to it. One is the technical side, and that is this order, to turn the planes around. It wasn't a written order. It was an oral order in court. The plane had already left. It was all a timeline thing. And now they are submitting, rebuttals about why it didn't happen. They didn't follow the order. I think on the broader sense, this is a separation of powers issue on this specific case, and I think that it continues to go up the chain, and I think that the administration feels like they have a pretty strong legal case when it comes to immigration specifically to deal with this.
I think they have good authority. I think there's a political risk here, not from the judge. The judge just keeps digging a hole, the first rule of holes. It's the question of what happens to these men. When the Soviets beat the Wehrmacht, a lot of the German troops just disappeared into Russia and were never seen again. They sent a bunch of Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador. So it's like sending Bloods to Crips land. Do you think there's any blowback there at all, Brett?
I think that's a great question, Hugh. I think the president of El Salvador has been very, very friendly and accommodating, and even kind of jesting that it already had happened even after the judge's orders. I think that the political fallback here is minuscule because most people look at this as trying to get bad people out of the country, and it seems common sense. And when Democrats talk about it, it's a lot about due process. But I heard Secretary Rubio the other day on Guy Benson's show say, listen, we know everybody on those planes was either criminal, illegal immigrant, or an illegal immigrant, some way, shape, or form, and they're going back out of the country.
Yeah, I'm not worried about I actually think they're fine on the law under a variety of statutes, and I spent a lot of time this weekend on it. And like I said, I know my way around PQ doctrine stuff, and I think I know what ought to happen. Andy McCarthy and I have had a very civilized disagreement. I don't mind the Chief Justice pushing back on impeachment. He runs Article 3. He's going to defend his guys and his gals. But I do worry about sending foreign nationals to an adversarial prison camp. It'll be interesting to see. Let's talk now about the war in Israel, the war with the Houthis, and what I sense, Brett, the president has set this up 1, 2, 3, and Khamenei is in a corner. And if he does not throw the doors open, I think the bombs are coming down. What do you think?
I agree, and I think the president has been really clear about that. His last Truth Social on this was essentially, if the Houthis continue to act, that it is an extension of Iran, not just this offshoot Houthi rebel group, and thereby laying the groundwork for whatever comes next. I think his ultimate goal is to get to a negotiating table. I think he sees himself as the deal maker of deal makers, not only on Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Hamas, but I think that he thinks that Iran wants to get to the table or will be forced to, facing the prospect of an attack.
Now, when Senator Cotton was on the program yesterday, he thought the word had gone out to Khamenei. Now we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, but we're going to do it one way or the other. And he does mean complete disarmament. And I think he means fairly quick. Like, I think the President Trump has put himself on a timeline and put Khamenei in a corner, and that we're going to have a resolution of this by the end of April. Now, some people think I'm being very aggressive there, but I don't, especially after Israel started the war again last night. And I don't think they had a choice because Hamas was playing them. But do you sense a tick down?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a very fast clock here, in part because Israel is emboldened. They took out a lot of Iranian air defenses the last time they went in, and Iran has been trying to rebuild, but it hasn't. So they're fairly naked when it comes to air defenses. And I think that they realize that this is the time. It's either now or never, and he's putting out the signals. It's either now or never.
And so to Netanyahu, and close this up, I know you got Ty over there. He's seen some pretty horrible scenes in Gaza last night. I'm sure they are. I'm sure there are innocent people in Gaza. But I don't know that the Israelis have a choice. Either they can't stay where they are. And I expect ground troops soon. I'm just wondering what your expectation is.
Yeah, I think that Netanyahu signaled that it's back on and that Hamas made a choice. They could have come forward with more hostages, dead and alive. They didn't. And so now they've opened up the response. And I agree with you. I think they're not going to stop now. And I think Hamas is going to realize how good that ceasefire really was.
And they should have taken the white flag and gone to Iran when they could. Brett Baer, always a pleasure. We'll be watching tonight at 6 p.m. on Special Report. America's most watched newsman is Brett Baer, for a good reason. He knows how to ask good questions. And thank you, Brett. Let me tell everyone I got a brand new sponsor. I'm very proud of this. I was telling some folks at breakfast this morning who are older than I am about Chapter Medicare. And I don't know a single person who uses Medicare who doesn't hate it. I mean, really. Now, it works. It's not that it doesn't work. It works. When you finally get a Medicare program and you finally get A, B, C, G, D, F, I, there are like 1,000. There are 24,000 different Medicare choices. And there are, quote, agents out there, and they're usually retirees who just came back from another job, and they're trying to make their computer program work. It's a big data problem. There's too much data for an ordinary human being to work with. It's like trying to find health insurance for your company. When I ran a law firm, I'm retired now, I teach and I practice for friends and family. When you're trying to find a Medicare plan, you need someone to help you. And I want you to call on your phone, pound 250, and say Chapter Medicare. Because big data has come for Medicare. Finally, big data has come. All you have to do is get with one of their people. It's not mom and pop down the street. It's big AI. It's big data. Hashtag 250 and say the keywords Chapter Medicare and you'll be on your way. Hashtag 250, keyword that you say to the operator, Chapter Medicare. Markets have closed, so let me bring you the market update brought to you by our sponsor, AmericanFederal.com. Remember, Nick Grovich and his team at American Federal buy and sell gold and silver and platinum. They also do collectibles. I don't recommend collectibles unless you are actually a hobbyist. If you're a hobbyist, Nick will spend forever with you because he's a hobbyist too. But mostly he buys and sells bullion. Sometimes a lot of it. Sometimes like $1 million worth of it. Sometimes $100,000 worth of it. Sometimes you want to buy $5,000 worth of gold or $10,000. You do it every year and you just put it in the safety deposit box. Whatever you're, a small buyer or a large buyer, the smaller amount you buy, the more commission you pay. The smaller amount you sell, the more commission you pay. If you sell them a lot of gold, you pay a less commission. Nick's got it. It's all very transparent. But he also sponsors the market report. You can call Nick at 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694, or go to AmericanFederal.com. Last week I asked Nick what was going on in gold. He said, we're going to hit 3,000. We're not going to break through. We're going to try to churn around 3,000 for a while. and like we did when we hit 2,000. Well, maybe not. Gold's at $3,042 an ounce today. $3,042 an ounce. I'm glad I bought gold in January. Now it could go down again. I don't buy it for that. I don't trade gold. It just goes in the safety deposit box. I hope the great-grandchildren get it. But I hope they can find the safety deposit box. I don't know where it is. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt puts it away. But $3,042 an ounce. The Dow was down 0.62%. The S&P 500 was down 1.07%. The NASDAQ was down 1.71%. But gold went up to $3,042 an ounce. And that's not, there are no guarantees it's going to keep marching north. I've been on the radio since 1990, and there's always a gold sponsor. Sometimes they're hinky, and I don't like them, and I get rid of them. Sometimes they're the best people in the world, like AmericanFederal.com, and I hope he never goes away. I want Nick to be in the business as long as I'm on the air, because I think he's the best gold sponsor I've ever had. And I've probably had 4 or 5 over the. I got nothing bad to say about anyone, but they sell different things. Nick sells gold and silver, and it's just like straightforward. So I just want Nick to stay in business forever. 800-221-7694. So give your business to him. But I don't think it's ever gone this north, this far, this fast in all the years I've been on the radio or the television. I've been on the radio since 1990 and television since 1992. And I don't think I've ever seen it like this. That's pretty interesting. I think that's pretty interesting. Let's go hear what Secretary Rubio had to say today when he was being asked about the Hamas swaps at a press gaggle. Cut number 10.
Well, I think our priority always as the U.S. government is always that we care about all the hostages. We want all the hostages released. We believe they should all be released. Okay, and that, by the way, we talk about hostages, we're also talking about bodies. Okay, and these trades are being made, and they're ridiculous trades. We're talking about 400 people for 3. These are nuts. And on top of that, you see the condition these people are being released in. So this is think about what we're talking about here. I mean, we're sitting around as the world sort of accepting that it's normal and okay for you to go into a place, kidnap babies, kidnap teenagers, kidnap people that have nothing to do with any wars, that are not soldiers, that are not anything, and taking them and putting them in tunnels for almost 1.5 years. And we're acting like if this is a normal exchange, this is a normal thing that happens, this is an outrage. So they should all be released. So I'm not going to comment on what we're going to accept or not accept, other than all of us. The whole world should continue to say that what Hamas has done is outrageous.
Now, what Prime Minister Netanyahu said today, I want to quote to him from the Times of Israel. Hamas has no shame. They have no red lines. They simply echo, and he's now talking about the media, they echo the Hamas propaganda time and time again. So I want to say to Hamas, don't rely on this media, because nothing will stop us from achieving all the goals of the war. Military pressure, he says, is a necessary condition for the freeing of our hostages. The goals complement each other. He says of the ballistic missiles fired by the Houthis earlier today, he greatly appreciates the United States' cooperation against the Iranian axis in Yemen. Quote, we still have a great deal of work to do against other parts of the axis of evil. With God's help, united we will act, and united we will win. I don't know if they're listening, but they ought to be paying attention. Here's National Security Advisor Michael Waltz last night with Laura Ingraham, cut number 9.
Well, number one, our sovereignty and the safety of our citizens is a core national security issue. Number two, this organization, Tren de Agua, has been declared lawfully a foreign terrorist organization from a legal standpoint. And then number three, Laura, I could tell you the average American, the people out there just trying to keep their families safe, when you talk about hundreds of members, tattooed, violent gang members being deported, they're saying, thank you, President Trump. Local law enforcement is saying, thank you, President Trump. Our sheriffs are saying, thank you. At the end of the day, these gang members are an arm of a foreign terrorist organization. They are no different than ISIS in the way that they rape, torture, kill, maim their victims. They're no different. And we've categorically said that they're no different. They're lucky, frankly, that they got a deportation flight.
No different from ISIS. That's a great line. They ought to use that again. Let's go over to Sean Parnell now. He gave a Pentagon briefing yesterday about The Houthis. Cut number 11, spokesperson for Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense.
Firing at U.S. military personnel in the region and shooting at our ships and shooting at our drones and putting American lives at risk is not a good way to end this conflict. The Houthis could stop this tomorrow if they said, we're going to stop shooting at your people. But they've clearly chosen not to do that. And so this campaign will be relentless to degrade their capability and to open up shipping lanes in the region and to defend our homeland.
Relentless is a word I like. I like the word relentless. Let's go to the back to the president. Kennedy Center gaggle yesterday after his walkabout with Rick Grinnell, cut number 1.
Do you have a red line for the drug cartels that if crossed, it would automatically trigger a military response from the U.S.?
Well, we'll see, but we're not going to put up with it. This country is not going to allow people to come in and dump drugs and kill our youth and other than our youth, too. Older people are very much affected, so it's we're not going to let that happen.
And then he went on to talk about TDA, but he got a question from NBC, didn't like cut number 3.
Sir, and when you signed the CR...
Who are you with?
Sir, I'm with NBC News.
Oh, that's the same one. I don't want to talk to NBC anymore. I think you're so discredited.
Mr. President,
I'm not with NBC anymore. All right? Not with NBC. Cut number, I was there for 4 years. I did my time. There are two kinds of Republicans on NBC, refugees and missionaries. I was a missionary for a long time. I'm no longer a missionary. Let me remind you about Food for the Poor. It's our Lenten campaign. Every single year in Lent, I ask you to dig into your wallet and give to Food for the Poor. They work throughout the worst hit regions of Haiti and Central America. This year they are focused on El Salvador and feeding children in El Salvador. And they do it at $100 feeds a kid for an entire year. One child for an entire year gets lunch every day for an entire year. So your $100, $100 will get you and a date out for dinner, bottle of wine maybe, and you'll have a nice time, maybe see a movie. I don't know what $100 pays for anymore. But you can feed a child for an entire year. So go for a walk instead and go over to HughHewitt.com, find the banner at the top, feed their future, and be as generous as you can. If you can give $1,000 and feed 10 children, thank you. Whatever you can do is appreciated. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. I'm Hugh Hewitt, the Ted Lasso of Talk Radio. Great to have you with me. Joined by Byron York, who is the... next segment? Oh, I'm open then. I can talk to Generalissimo about losing 50 pounds. MyPhDWeightLoss.com, 864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
You got a purple shirt on today, not a green shirt.
Yeah, because it's not Wednesday when we were going to do this.
Well, I know, but I all of a sudden realized I was calling for Byron York and I had the wrong time on the clock. I'm so blown away by Jack Nicklaus being a very good interview and being interviewed by a rookie, my buddy Adler. And you know Hank.
Oh, yeah.
And Hank can talk a bit. But I, the danger of people doing an interview who've never done an interview before. What is it?
Basically over-preparing and hijacking the interview.
That's it. It's talking too much. The interview is about, I always, when I go on the road and I do an event, we have these new affiliates. Maybe I'll get up to the Hudson Valley sometime. And I'll tell you in advance, Mr. Program Director, I'm going to show the show is the show. They're coming to hear the person being interviewed. So I used to run the Nixon Library for many, many years. And whenever we would have a special guest come, I'd remind the team, and the team still lives by this, the show is the show. They do want the color guard, they do want the national anthem, and then they want the guest. So if it's Justice Gorsuch, they want Justice Gorsuch to sit down and start talking. If it's Brett Barrett, they don't want a lot of introductions. They don't want you to recognize the trustees. The event is the event. And when I go out on the road on the political campaign, let's say we're doing a Senate debate, as I did when J.D. Vance ran against half dozen other Republicans, and I was one of the moderators in Columbus. And the key was get to the event. It's 90 minutes. Don't waste time on the rules. Just get to the questions. So I should get to myPhDWeightLoss.com. Why are they our sponsor?
Because they are a group of people that actually help you lose weight and keep it off. It works. It's not drugs. It's not shots. It's just good nutrition.
But why are they our sponsor?
Because I lost 50 pounds.
Yeah, not me. I'm naturally this thin and incredibly in shape. It's Dwayne who was liking the popcorn.
I was a little girthier than I am now.
Girthier?
Yes.
It's a new word. You've
Yes.
been into the dictionary?
Yes.
You know what word we could not think of
What word?
this weekend? The fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I got out of the house for a grand total of 30 minutes this weekend,
Yes.
and we saw a child with red hair.
Okay.
And this happens to me on the air sometimes. You just can't get a word. You can't get a name.
Yeah.
There's a way to describe people with just a touch of red in their hair. Do you know what that word is?
Yeah, I'm sure there is a word.
You don't know the word, do you?
I don't know which one you're
Come
reaching
up with
for.
any word that means red-haired.
Ginger.
Ginger. And we could not. The two of us working together. Normally the elevator will come up. It might stop at every floor, but the elevator will come up pretty quickly for one of us.
Well, you are 10 years on from me.
I know, but there were two of us. So we
Okay.
had two older brains than yours trying to figure out ginger. I said, oh, she's going to be a ginger, one of our grandchildren. It's going to be a ginger, a little bit of ginger there. And could not come up with the word, as we were saying, red-haired. It's got like a connotation to it, a sparky, but it's not sparky. And ginger means combative. I went and looked it up. It's Old English meant combative, and there's
Yes.
it's a little bit sparky.
It's also spice, and to you, anything more than pepper is a little spicy.
Oh, pepper's too spicy for me.
Yes.
Yeah. I am Mr. Hold all those spices, please. How do you think I would do in the average Mexican restaurant on Capo Beach?
Ordering the quesadillas.
Well, the quesadillas was what I
Yeah,
ordered the first
yeah.
time. Yeah, but what I didn't.
Yeah,
even eat them.
I don't think you're going to do too well.
No. The best part about Landman, the funniest part, the Landman is a pretty funny show, but the funniest part is
First episode.
a worm, the new guy in the crew, goes to a funeral of a Latina guy who's been killed and gets fed a plate of stuff, and they know he can't eat it. They know he can't eat it. So what do they do on My PhD Weight Loss? Do they?
No, they don't make you eat a bunch of food you can't eat.
But
no.
I mean, is it spicy?
Not necessarily. It's just basically protein-based stuff.
864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
Let me also remind people, since we're talking about food, it is Lent, Food for the Poor. It's our annual campaign. Feed Their Future. The banner's at the top of HughHewitt.com, or you can call in a gift, 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673, or text my name Hewitt, H-E-W-I-T-T, to 51555. We're getting hundreds of you every day are remembering. I guess it takes all 40 days of Lent, and you haven't been to you haven't done a thing for Lent. I know you Catholics are listening. You're supposed to be doing something every day, and you're not doing it. You're not eating meat on Friday, but you're not doing whatever you promised to be doing. So you can make up for it with a gift to Feed for the Poor and Feed Their Future at Food for the Poor banner, top of HughHewitt.com. Byron York is the Washington Examiner's chief political correspondent. He's also a Fox News contributor. Byron, welcome. I wonder what you thought when the bombs started to fall in Gaza last night.
I was not particularly surprised. I mean, didn't pretty much everybody think that phase 2 really wasn't going to happen? There had been intelligence and talk about some sort of new Hamas attack that was in the works. So I wasn't terribly surprised.
I was, only because they have an ongoing constitutional crisis, a real one, in Israel, about whether the Netanyahu government can fire the head of Shin Bet, which is their FBI, and their attorney general, who was appointed by the previous government. And they don't have a written constitution. All they have is a basic law. And the AG really hates Netanyahu, who's making stuff up as she goes along. And I don't think a head of Shin Bet has ever been fired before. And therefore, I was taken by surprise. I thought they would resolve that this week before and let Witkoff have another week. So now I don't think it stops, though. I thought it was coming to a head, but now that it's begun, I don't think it's going to stop again. Do you?
No. I mean, every time I've ever seen Netanyahu talk, he stresses the goals of the war. And it's not just to get hostages back. It's to destroy Hamas as a force in Gaza forever and ever. So he's never said that Israel had accomplished that. He didn't even suggest that Israel was close to accomplishing that. So I would agree with you.
Now, there are 21 hostages, maximum number of 21 hostages alive. One of them is American, and Dan Alexander is a dual citizen. They are all young men of military age. More than 400 Israeli soldiers have died in Gaza. I think the emotional calculation has changed for Israel, but I'm not an Israeli. And I listen to as many podcasts as I can by people who know Israel a lot better than I do, and to Israelis. But I think the cost in Israel is being counted differently now. Do you get that same sense, Byron?
I think you're paying even more attention to it than I am. I think there's a couple of things. One, they're deeply divided over there about how to respond to this, and certainly about the leadership of Netanyahu. And I always thought that after October 7th, the obvious priority was to retaliate for October 7th, try to get the hostages back. But there was going to come a time of reckoning for how incredibly unprepared they were for this attack. And even if they're successful in destroying Hamas, they would have to look back at everything that was being done, and more importantly, not done, to secure that border with Gaza at that time, and they would have to make some major changes in the way they were operating.
As an objective matter, and this includes the cost of a horrific massacre that murdered 1,200 people, wounded 5,250 hostages, the emotional toll. Objectively, as a nation state, is Israel better off today than they were on 10/6?
Boy, I think that's a question you can't answer, because, first of all, you don't really want to put that price on human life and the loss that people experience. Strategically, in the damage that they've done, not just to Hamas, but to Hezbollah and to other Iranian-backed proxies, they've made a heck of a lot of progress.
Yeah, this is my
and they're in
bridge.
a much better place.
I don't think those 1,200 people died in vain, or the hostages who were executed, because I believe Iran is going to suffer the regime. Not only has it been crippled in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, I think Donald Trump's going to bomb the crap out of them. And I think he's going to do it pretty soon with the Israelis. That's what I think. What do you think, Byron?
I don't know. I mean, we did see a pretty robust American attack against the Houthis. There needs to be more of that. And clearly, the attack was directed at the Houthi leadership and the Iranian support of the Houthis. It was not like they were just an attack just on the Houthi forces. So I do think you're going to see more, and some of it will involve the United States. I hope a lot of it does not involve the United States. This is not the United States' fight, but the United States has been very, very supportive of Israel.
Now, Byron, I'm kind of a hawk on this, and I'm sure I've known Tucker a long time. I got to have Tucker on to talk to him about this. I know Tucker doesn't want to attack Iran, but I don't think we can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, because they're a religious, fanatical group. They're not like North Korea. They're not like Putin. They're not like the Pakistan junta. They're not like India. They actually have a death wish. They have a theological argument for using nuclear. I don't think we can let them have them. And when I hear the president
said very, very clearly that Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon as long as Donald Trump is president.
And well, yeah, but that's only 45 months. And I think he goes down in history if he takes out that program as a strong and successful president. And I think he wants to be a strong and successful president in history. And the one way to do that is to end that program. And what a way to draw a line between the Biden regency and the Obama apostrophe and Donald Trump if he takes out the Iranian nuclear weapons. Whenever he talks about the nuclear, he's been doing this for 10 years now. The nuclear, it's too big. People don't know about the nuclear. I know what he's saying. He's talking about Oppenheimer. I'm what, Veda, with the guy who's death. What's the name? I'm Vishnu. Yeah, I'm Vishnu. I know what he's talking about.
Well, don't you think the Israelis can do that?
No.
The problem was, in the past, you had an American administration actively trying to hold back the Israelis and to withhold some forms of aid, but definitely trying to hold back the Israelis from doing things they were capable of doing.
Yeah, I don't think they can get deep enough underground to get the centrifuges, and that we have the Moabs and other ordnance that can be dropped on the mountains. That's what I think the problem is. You're not going to comment?
Well, I don't know exactly what to say to that. I'd have to look into this more carefully. I'll tell you right now, I don't know. I understand the whole bunker busting situation, but I'm not entirely sure that Israel can't pull something off like this. And of course, I don't really want to see the United States engaging.
I think Ehud Barak once said it would take you guys 3 hours over Iran, it would be over. I think he's underestimating it would take 96 hours, but we'll see. Byron, when you hear someone like me say, this is a non-justiciable political question that the judge ought to dismiss, and if the ACLU wants to take it up to the circuit, let them, he's punching above his weight when he's punching at DOJ and the president, and he's not making anybody happy. He ought to punt. Am I persuasive to you?
Yeah, I just don't see why Judge Boasberg didn't punt to begin with.
Right.
Now, he is a judge in the district court of the District of Columbia, so I think he thinks he's in the middle. He's not in some district in Washington State.
Oh, he's a federal district court judge. They're going to get to heaven and be surprised that they're not in charge. Do you not know any federal district court judges? They don't have to be on the Supreme Court. They all think they're God.
Hasn't Trump in the past had like district judges just way out in the world somewhere?
Yeah, oh yeah,
issuing a nationwide injunction.
Oh yeah, he had a Reagan senior circuit judge in Washington State tell him he couldn't issue the Declaration on Citizenship that was patently unconstitutional. I don't know if the guy can read anymore. He's like 90 years old, and so yeah, we have rando judges problem, but that's not this. This is just a guy who thinks he's in charge.
Yeah, and I don't know why. At least the judge didn't say, well, there are judges above me, and I think they ought to take a look at this.
That's what he should do.
It would have gotten to the Supreme Court very quickly.
Yeah, I would at least get it up. But I think they do fall in love with themselves, Byron. And
yeah, you're right.
And they just think, my gosh, I'm going to tell the President of the United States what to do, and this president is not for telling. Last question. Do you think he's more comfortable being president than he's ever been before?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just astonishing. You talk to him or you talk to the people around him. I mean, the second swing of the ball is just so different than the
He's
first.
seeing the seam. Man, and he won the tournament. He won the club championship, too, so he's in a good mood.
He's in a very good mood. He's in a golf-induced good mood.
That's how the world leaders ought to call him after he wins the club championship when they want a tariff talk down. They got to call him after he's won something. Byron York, always good to talk to you. Follow him on X at Byron York. Israeli jets are hitting Syrian army outposts in the Homs area. So they're not resting. They're not resting anywhere. Israel is at war with everyone who threatens it, and they're not stopping. And I don't know what we're going to do. In the market today, I want to check on what the 10-year interest rate did, because AndrewandTodd.com are a sponsor of mine. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And AndrewandTodd.com lend you money to buy a house, and they're busier than they have been in 2.5 years. And I believe what's going on, and I'm not a mortgage broker. They are. They're not a mortgage broker. They're a lender. Sorry about that. Andrew gets mad when I said they lend you the money. They're with Sierra Pacific. They're a bank. They're not a broker. They're a bank. So the interest rate they charge you depends on what the 10-year Treasury is, and it's at 4.2888. That means your rates may be in the fives now. Maybe in the fives. Probably in the low sixes. And that's for a 30-year fixed in which you put 10 or 20% down. What you get for a rate depends on how much money you're putting down, where you're buying it, your credit rating, obviously, whether or not you have to put a contingency on the house, whether you're paying, whether you're using a FHA loan because you're a first-time home buyer or a veteran, you're not putting anything down. Your rate depends on who you are. But you know what doesn't depend? Service. Service depends on the loan officer. And the loan officer here are Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. Todd started up the shop, I think, 30 years ago, and Andrew came in 20 years ago, but AndrewandTodd.com is easier to remember, so we do it that way. And they're fabulous. They did the loan when I moved back to the Beltway. I'm a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm in California for a few months out in Studio West. They cannot wait for me to leave I cannot tell you how happy they will be when I leave. I'm in the production studio, and they want me to go. Do you want me to leave, Dwayne? How happy are you going to be when I leave? I haven't been out
go
here.
back east?
Yeah.
You
You got champagne on ice in there?
About a 7 on a scale of 10.
Yeah. How about you, Harley? How happy are you going to be when I leave? Harley?
About the same.
About the same, Adam? Yeah. See, they can't wait for me to get out of here. They like it when I work out in my own studio. But Andrew and Todd are responsible for me living in Virginia because they did my loan. When I took over Bill Bennett's slot, and then when I moved to the afternoon when Seb went in the White House, I said, finally, I'm in God's land. And 888-1172. 888-1172. Get your loan from them. Dwayne's criticizing my voice even though I've been sick. I really think that's the kind of producer I've got. He's been telling me my voice is sounding thin and high because I've been sick for 12 days. If I had a producer, well, let me not digress. I want to get right to Bibi Netanyahu, who gave a speech tonight in Israel that I want you to hear 2 minutes of, cut number 16, if we have it loaded. We don't have it loaded yet. Bibi Netanyahu went in front of the Israeli people and really laid it out for them. And he did it in English because he realizes a lot of the media that originates in Israel then comes over to us and is ready to go so that the American public gets it and understands them as well. Have we got it ready? If not, I'll go. Okay. I'm going to go and play instead J.D. Vance. We'll come back to that. Let's go to J.D. Vance at the American Dynamism Summit. Oh, the whole machine broke down on us? You know, there are days and then there are days. We have a machine called a TriCaster, and it is a problematic beast on some days. So here's where we stand. Last night I got home from teaching, and I checked the news before I go to sleep, and I see that Israel has resumed the war. And I thought, did not see that coming, because they have a constitutional crisis. They're trying to they're trying to fire their attorney general, and they are trying to fire the head of the FBI. And there is no written constitution in Israel. That's a bad thing. It's good to have a written constitution. Ours is the oldest in the world. I didn't hear you, Adam. Okay, we got Bibi Netanyahu. And so I get home and I see the war started again. And I think, this is my guess, it's not going to stop again. There's not going to be a ceasefire unless Hamas says, we're turning over every live hostage and we're marching out of here. We want to go to Tehran. In which case there'll be a ceasefire to let them get on a boat and go to Tehran. But otherwise, I don't think it's going to stop again. Here is Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Hamas is responsible for this war. It invaded our towns, murdered our people, raped our women, and kidnapped our loved ones. Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. While Israel accepted the offer of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, Hamas flatly refused to do so. And this is why I authorized yesterday the renewal of military action against Hamas. Israel does not target Palestinian civilians. We target Hamas terrorists. And when these terrorists embed themselves in civilian areas, when they use civilians as human shields, they're the ones who are responsible for all unintended casualties. Palestinian civilians should avoid any contact with Hamas terrorists. And I call on the people of Gaza, get out of harm's way, move to safer areas. Because every civilian casualty is a tragedy. And every civilian casualty is the fault of Hamas. I thank President Trump for his unwavering support for Israel. Our alliance with the United States has never been stronger. To those who criticize Israel, I ask, what would you do if terrorists murdered and kidnapped your children? You would do what we are doing. In the face of pure evil, free societies have no choice but to fight. So I want to assure all our friends around the world, Israel will fight and Israel will win. We will bring our people home and we will destroy Hamas. We will not relent until we achieve all these vital goals. And we will not rest until we give our country a future of peace, prosperity, and hope.
I believe him. I also believe Donald Trump when he has warned Iran. One more attack from the Houthis on an American ship. I mean, they might make stuff up. I saw last night some counter reporting from OSINT Defender, which is an open source intel source, that the Houthis were spouting off and saying they were shooting at the Truman, and they weren't. Well, here's the deal. If they're not shooting at the Truman, we're not going to bomb Tehran. If they're sending out press releases, we don't really worry about press releases. One more submersible, one more motorboat, one more cruise missile, a few more drones, I think boom, boom, boom goes the nuclear sites. And I will be happy about that. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Do you want President Trump to bomb Iran if the Houthis shoot at American sailors again? 1-800-520-1234. That's my question. I don't want to hear you talking about anything else. I got one question. If the Houthis shoot at American sailors again, do you want President Trump to bomb the Iranian nuclear sites? 1-800-520-1234. While we're clearing some phone calls, let's listen to Vice President Vance at the American Dynamism Summit today, cut number 5.
Because there were two conceits that our leadership class had when it came to globalization. The first is assuming that we can separate the making of things from the design of things. The idea of globalization was that rich countries would move further up the value chain while the poor countries made the simpler things. You would open an iPhone box and it would say designed in Cupertino, California. Now, the implication, of course, is that it would be manufactured in Shenzhen or somewhere else. And yeah, some people might lose their jobs in manufacturing, but they could learn to design, or to use a very popular phrase, learn to code. But I think we got it wrong. It turns out that the geographies that do the manufacturing get awfully good at the designing of things. There are network effects, as you all well understand. The firms that design products work with firms that manufacture. They share intellectual property, they share best practices, and they even sometimes share critical employees. Now, we assume that other nations would always trail us in the value chain, but it turns out that as they got better at the low end of the value chain, they also started catching up on the higher end. We were squeezed from both ends. Now, that was the first conceit of globalization. I think the second is that cheap labor is fundamentally a crutch, and it's a crutch that inhibits innovation. I might even say that it's a drug that too many American firms got addicted to. Now, if you can make a product more cheaply, it's far too easy to do that rather than to innovate. And whether we were offshoring factories to cheap labor economies or importing cheap labor through our immigration system, cheap labor became the drug of Western economies. And I'd say that if you look in nearly every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labor, you've seen productivity stagnate. And I don't think that's not a total happenstance. I think that the connection is very direct. Now, one of the debates you hear on the minimum wage, for instance, is that increases in the minimum wage force firms to automate. So a higher wage at McDonald's means more kiosks. And whatever your views on the wisdom of the minimum wage, I'm not going to comment on that here. Companies innovating in the absence of cheap labor is a good thing. I think most of you are not worried about getting cheaper and cheaper labor. You're worried about innovating, about building new things, about the old formulation of technology is doing more with less. You guys are all trying to do more with less every single day. And so I'd ask my friends, both on the tech optimist side and on the populist side, not to see the failure of the logic of globalization as a failure of innovation. Indeed, I'd say that globalization's hunger for cheap labor is a problem precisely because it's been bad for innovation. Both our working people, our populists, and our innovators gathered here today have the same enemy. And the solution, I believe, is American innovation.
I think that J.D. Vance is right. Let's go to Philadelphia and talk with Nancy, 1-800-520-1234. Nancy on line 2, 1-800-520-1234. Hi, Nancy. What do you say?
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
I do. I say one more bad act by the Houthis on behalf of Iran, bomb Iran, and let the Persian citizens yearning for freedom finally be free.
Well, I think they'll get mowed down by the IRGC, Tiananmen Square style. I don't think they're going to be free, but we're going to be free of the threat of a nuclear weapon in the hands of the fanatics. And that's good enough for me.
Good.
I don't want boots on the ground. I just want to be clear about that. Hey, Nancy, thank you. Ron in Marietta, Georgia, 1-800-520-1234. If the Houthis attack American sailors, should the president bomb Iranian nuclear facilities? Go ahead, Ron. Ron in line number 1. Ron, apparently he's gone. Angela, Connecticut, line number 3.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi there. Absolutely. We need to do what we need to do and take care of the Houthis and let them know that we're not playing around. We're going to do what we said we're going to do.
So you're not worried about
Follow
getting
through.
involved in a ground war? Just bomb?
No.
Yeah,
Well, of course, we'd rather not be, like you said, rather not have boots on the ground, but we have to do what we have to do. It's that simple.
All right. Thank you, Angela. Ron and Marietta, stay there. I'll get to you after the break. 1-800-520-1234. Some of you folks are calling up and saying, yeah, bomb, no bomb, and then you're hanging up. That does not help me, really. The talk show, I don't do it very often, but when I do it, I want to actually talk to you. I want to hear your reasoning. 1-800-520-1234 connects you to me, Hugh Hewitt. I got a lot of calls. I'm going to get to them. I do want to tell Donald and Phil and Greg and Philip, I'm going to talk to you all. Other people are lined up. My question's very simple. If the Houthis shoot at another American sailor, one more drone, one more missile, one more submersible, one more motorboat, do we drop bombs on Iran's nuclear sites? My answer is yes. I also want to let you know, I think the Chief Justice is right to announce we ought not to be talking about impeachment of federal judges. Impeachment of federal judges upsets the constitutional order. We are defined as Americans by the rule of law. Judges can get it. And I think Judge Bosbest is really wrong, and that this is a non-justiciable political question, and he's violating the first rule of holes for federal judges, but it wouldn't be the first time. They are often wrong. We don't need to get all whacked up about impeachment. We don't need to have all the Twitter warriors out there demanding the impeachment of the guy. I know he's a President Obama judge, but he's a federal judge. He ought to punt. He ought to dismiss it as moot, because it is moot. And it's not a wrong capable of repetition yet evading review, because these people aren't ever coming back. So I don't know why it's still in court. But really, the Chief Justice is right. Let's leave the impeachment stuff alone. Let me also remind you, I am not, if you're a big fan of Big Pharma, I'm on in Philadelphia. Just had a nice call from Nancy in Philadelphia. A lot of Big Pharma in Philadelphia. I love you people. My brother was Big Pharma for 40 years. Mycroft, he's a scientist. He got all those science brains. He invented kidney drugs, and he did it for 4 different companies. He's a research toxicologist specializing in the kidney. Takes forever to get these things done. Takes forever to spend the money. I am all for pharma. I'm all for serious patent protection, but not patent manipulation. I do not like the pharma lobby. The pharma lobby goes in, and they try and take a healthcare system that is developed through pathway evolution, step by step. Nobody planned our healthcare system. It ended up this way. And then they see a big pool of money, and they go and they say, we want that. Screw everybody else. And you know what it does? It breaks the system again. Can we leave healthcare alone for 5 years? Just leave it alone. Go to pharmawindfall.com. Like, that's for conservatives for lower healthcare costs.com. And the website is pharmawindfall.com. When you go to pharmawindfall.com, you'll find out how to let your legislator know that. Just leave everything alone. Would you please fix Medicare so we don't get 1,000 things that say this is not a bill? Can we please get big data going? I got a brand new sponsor I told you about before, Chapter Medicare. And Chapter Medicare is bringing big data. And eventually big data is going to fix all this stuff. But in the meantime, just don't change anything. PharmaWindfall.com. Stop another pharma giveaway. They make good money. Those companies are not losing money. They do great things. In praise of Big Pharma, their science is wonderful. Their lobbyists are not. San Jose, California. Hello, Philip. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show. How are you? Cut line number 4.
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for taking care of that country. They're done. They're done. They need to be taken care of. It should have been taken care of a long time ago. Obama gave them billions, and it's wrong.
All those billions are being blown up in the tunnels of Gaza, and got blown up in the missiles of Hezbollah and got blown up in the Assad biological weapons factories and chemical weapons factories. So they blew it, and we're not going to give them any more. Thank you, Philip. Let's go to Scottsdale next. Hey, Phil, you're on with Hugh Hewitt.
Hey, thank you. It's Bill Rafalo, Scottsdale, Arizona. You know, Iran hides behind the Houthis, and they supply them with all the artillery, rockets, surface missiles. I agree 100% that Trump is taking action. We need to stop them from, causing all this traffic. They're stopping traffic of these ships going through. So it's a nice thing. I support it 100%.
Phil, thank you. By the way, are you listening on KKNT?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm back on in the Valley. I love talking to Phoenix again live. When I moved in the mornings, it was kind of in the middle of the night there. But now I've been over to Phoenix a million times. One of my favorite markets. Absolutely one of my favorite markets. I love the Biltmore, except for one reason. You can't find anything in the Biltmore. Oh, he's gone. If Steve or Eric or JP is listening, Danny couldn't find it anyway. You can't find anything in the Biltmore. I haven't done an event at the Biltmore in a long time. I got to get over there. Donald in Euclid, Ohio. Go Browns. Hey, Donald.
Yes.
You ready for Shador?
I don't know what Shador is.
Shador is our second round draft choice, our second choice in the draft. Colorado Buffalo quarterback who's going to come be a Brown and save the franchise.
Oh, okay. I'm not a big Browns fan. I mean, I'm an old Browns fan. I'm an
Well,
old man. I'm like 74 years old.
Well, you're older than I
don't
am.
follow
But,
the Browns too much now, and I didn't call about that. I called about Iran.
oh, you're one of those
Yeah.
guys. Well, okay, just having some fun. I mean,
okay. Well, go ahead. Yeah,
I
okay,
like
we
the
can have
Cavaliers.
fun.
And do you like the Guardians?
There's no fun with the
What
Cleveland
is it
Browns.
with the
Oh, yeah.
Ohio people? What's
Well,
it? Is it snowing?
I like all the teams. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like sports teams. I like, of course, the Cavs.
All right, the Cavs lost the other night. I'm just trying to have some fun
and
with
the
you.
Guardians are a very
I'm one of
competitive
you.
team.
I'm from Warren.
Yeah.
We're nice in Warren. I guess in Euclid you're just mean.
Well, I don't know why you're accusing me of being mean. I wasn't trying to be mean.
I'm just kidding.
And if I am, I apologize.
Yeah, I'm giving you a hard time. Village of Euclid versus Ambler, worst con law decision in the history of the Constitution. So it's all on you. You know that you invented zoning there?
No, I did not.
You did. 1925 case. But let's talk about Iran, Donald. I asked for calls on Iran. You're talking about the Calves.
Well, you did that.
No, I did not do that.
You diverted
diverted from
everything.
Iran. I just want to know if you should bomb Iran.
No, I don't know. My answer would be no. I don't think we should.
Why not? You're not from Euclid. You're a seminar caller. You're from Pittsburgh, aren't you?
No, I don't know what to tell you. I'm calling from Euclid.
That
I
makes
gave you
two of
my
us.
answer. No, I don't think we should bomb Iran.
Why not?
Why?
Because they're going to get a nuclear weapon and they're going to use it on us or our friends.
Okay, well, I've heard that for the last 30 years.
Yeah, 'cause
I don't
they've been-
believe it. I think it's propaganda. I think it's propaganda from Zionists.
Oh, no.
Political
Okay.
Zionists.
Okay. I'm a Zionist, Donald. You and I are not going to get along.
Well,
But-
that's right. I know that.
But you're welcome to call anytime you want.
Huh?
But you're wrong about everything, but you're welcome to. What are you doing in Ohio? You sure you're not in Pittsburgh?
Okay, see, you're making fun of me because
No, I'm
I have
not.
a different opinion
I
of
think
you.
you're a seminar caller.
I'm not from Pittsburgh. I'm from Euclid, Ohio.
All right, tell me
and you
what-
got a
what's
problem because I got a difference of opinion.
What's
than
the city next to Euclid?
you. Cleveland?
No. Ohio City.
Ohio City's on the west side.
I know. I was just testing you. Okay, you really are from Euclid. Okay.
Oh, what do you? What? I'm not lying. Maybe you get a lot of callers that lie.
Oh, we get seminar calls. Donald, that long you've been listening to talk
I'm not
radio.
a seminar caller.
All right.
You asked me for my opinion.
I got it.
I told you what it was.
Yeah, you don't like
you
the Browns.
insulted me after I told you what it was. You called me a liar.
I didn't call you a liar. I called you a
don't
seminar
get you.
caller. That's a
You
difference.
sound like you would be a nice guy, but you're really not a nice guy at all. are you?
You really are. You're.
Yeah, what I am. What about you? You've insulted
Who do
me
I
the whole
sue to get
time.
this segment back?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to stay on the line.
Donald, we like you. We do. Call
I don't-
anytime. Anytime. Love you. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. We have a sense of humor. Some people don't. So we Just got reminded of why I don't take a lot of callers. I got to explain to my new audience in Hudson Valley, New York, WGHQ, WLNA, WBNR. Most of my callers have a sense of humor. I've been doing this since 1990, and most of them do have a sense of humor. I would say 95% of them do. Jim in San Antonio, do you have a sense of humor?
Yeah, you better believe I have a sense of humor, Hugh, and I listen to you every day. So, yes, that's.
I was ready for the paper straws or a Zionist plot line.
Ohio sports. I've learned more about Ohio sports than I think I ever wanted to know, and I love it. But I love it. I love your sense of humor. I love the sense of humor of the 95% of callers that call in. And that guy, the moment he opened his mouth, I knew leftist right off. I don't know what a seminar caller is, but they have no sense of humor at all. They take themselves and everybody else so seriously. It's the problem.
You know, Case. I was talking about your backyard yesterday to my students about Bernie. I was teaching the Bernie case and St. Mary's, and the fact that Bernie's a big deal in con law, and they've never been to Bernie, and I've been to St. Mary's. Are you near Bernie?
Not far at all. I'm a few miles from Bernie. Wait, but I don't know what Bernie case you're talking about.
Well, the city of Bernie versus Flores is a Supreme Court case that decided the constitutionality of a state cause of action provided for in the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And it's a big deal in Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. And I always I visited the church, the Catholic Church, and the city didn't want to expand. And it was, I think, a violation of their free exercise rights. But the court did not agree. So the court can be wrong. Even the great Justice Scalia can be wrong. But I was talking about Bernie, and I said, I've been there. My friend Mark and Linda lived there for a long time. He was taking care of Lady Lodge. And so I like San Antonio, but I especially like beating the Spurs. When the Cavs beat the Spurs is when I like them the most. So anyway.
You know what? As long as Popovich is still the coach of the Spurs,
oh, gosh.
I love the Cavs beating the Spurs.
Oh, God. I heard Jack Nicklaus interviewed this morning. Now, you want to talk about the opposite approach. Jack Nicklaus is the greatest of all time at what he does. He's a gentleman. He's funny. He's focused, and he doesn't pop off like Popov. And I know Popov is an Air Force veteran. I have great respect for his service. But that guy doesn't know anything. He just doesn't know anything.
That's right. He's lost a lot of his fan base here since 2015 because of that. So I'm hoping, praying, crossing my fingers, he retires this fall.
Well, he's had I don't wish him ill health. He's had a couple of health bouts, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's got health issues, but it was time for him to go long before that. So
well, I'm glad to have you on, and I'm glad that people in San Antonio have a sense of humor. We're going to test that, Jim, because Michael's going to join us next. Thank you, Jim. Michael's also in San Antonio. Hello, Michael. Do you have a sense of humor?
I do, and before I answer the question about Iran, I've got to tell you that while I was on hold during the break, you guys' voice was coming in and out. So you need to be careful what you say when somebody's on hold. You didn't say anything bad.
I know we didn't, but I'm looking at Dwayne, my non-producer. They were
normally I hear
Michael heard everything we were saying about him. Yeah.
You owed somebody something like I owe you and stuff like that.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I got to tell you, do you think the paper straws are a Zionist plot?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, see, then clearly you're not part of the Illuminati. How about the Bilderbergers?
No, not those guys either. I did go to St. Mary's University for grad school. I don't know if you were talking about St. Mary's Church or
no, St. Mary's Church is the church in Bernie, but I do know St. Mary's University, great grad school. Should we bomb Iran if they shoot at another one of our sailors?
Yes, and I like the exponential response because I'm an engineer. So you hit me
Bingo.
once, I'm going to hit you back harder. You hit me twice, I'm going to hit you 2 times, then 4
4x,
times, 8 times, and
then 16x.
When you don't want to hit me anymore.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Well done. Thank you. I love engineers. I got a lot of engineers and programmers listening to this program. Thank you, Michael. But go Cavs. Greg in Pittsburgh. What do you say, Greg?
Yeah, I think I would go after the oil refinery instead.
No, what's that going to do for us?
Stuff.
That's not going to stop
the nuke stuff. No, we've been talking about the nuke stuff for 30 years. It's real hard to do that. If you go after the refinery, it'll end. It'll come to an end. And Trump hasn't said exactly what he's going to do yet. But
He
in
is
the
not.
end, we have to do.
But you are
in
from
the end, we have to
Pittsburgh because
do
you're
what
doing
Trump
exactly
said.
the wrong thing. And because of you, Kenny Pickett's my quarterback now.
Yeah. Hey, I had a lot of hope for Kenny, but
but now he's a Brown.
I know. Well, that makes it even worse. He's
no,
out
it
at the
makes it
mistake by
worse.
the lake.
Worse.
The mistake by the lake.
I'm telling you, Greg.
Any better for Kenny?
If you don't want to bomb the Iran sites and you're from Pittsburgh, I know what we need to do, which is to bomb nuclear sites. Thank you, my friend. God bless you. I'm coming right back. 1-800-520-1234. If the Houthis shoot one more thing at our sailors, one more thing, do we bring the house down on Iran? Lilacs is in the house. You can see Lilacs every day if you watch him do his podcast, The Dining Room, at lilacs.com. And Lilacs, have you noticed among the many wins of Donald Trump that he's totally routed the paper straw people? I think they've collapsed. If you own stock in a paper straw company, what do you think is going on right now?
Well, the paper straw has collapsed like the very paper straw that he talks about. I mean, nobody liked it. It was a complete ridiculous act of overreach, shall we say. That the plastic straw, which was perfectly useful, and once more was known for its wonderful, ingenious little bend. I mean, an innovation that made America one of the nations that it is, and to ban it was stupid.
It was stupid,
yes,
but it's gone. I think it's effectively banned from the United States without actually being banned.
They'll be back. People will be a cry. But that's what's interesting about these times. We have on one hand, we say, well, let's talk about the paper straw ban, and Donald Trump came out against it. Also, let's talk about striking nuclear facilities in Iran.
Well, I'm not to Iran yet. I got a much more important question, because you are a newspaper man. You remember the comics section when the comics were great, right? And I actually know a couple of comics people.
To tell you the truth, the comic section was never as great as we remember it. I've spent a lot of time looking at the old comics, and the number of clinkers to the number of gems, the ratio was always pretty dodgy. But do go.
Well, we always read, like, for example, Kevin Fagan does Drabble, and he's a friend. I wouldn't call him a friend; he's an acquaintance of mine. He's a Southern California guy. I love Drabble. I've always loved Ralph. Norman less so, but I love Ralph, and I like donuts. So I've always liked that. But there is a comic that's especially connected with this season of the year. Do you know what it is?
Well, this season being, let's see, St. Patrick's. No, that's past. Spring, March Madness. The sports comic Gil Thorpe. What?
Tax season.
Oh, of course. Mallard Fillmore, is that the one you're talking about?
No, Kathy.
What is the
Kathy would always go to her accountant with a shoebox full and dump it. Her accountant, and Kathy was the only accountant who ever made it anywhere in media.
Mm-hmm. And then Kathy would say that catchphrase for which she was so justly renowned. Ack.
Ack.
So I know what
did you read Zitz?
Kathy. Zitz, yeah. Jim Borgman, I think.
How about Calvin Hobbes? Yes, of course.
Well, of course. We all love Calvin.
Is there any new... My question for you, because you are a newspaper guy, is there a comic of the last 10 years who's made it? Or is the form dead?
Well, it's twitching. There have been a couple that have come along, but it's hard to get them in because the paper readers are legacy readers. They love the newspaper and they love their comics. So you can have a guy who dies and the strip will continue for 20 years because they'll just simply print and print and print and print. Blondie, it is incapable to dynamite Blondie out of any newspaper in America because it's so beloved.
How about Archie?
Or rather, Archie really isn't one of those big comic strips you find in the paper these days. You're thinking of the books. I mean, we would love for the golden era that I think was there during Doonesbury, which I know, liberal comic book. We all read it because we were good college liberals. Bloom County, which was a brilliant comic. Calvin and Our Side. That was a nexus of really good comics that lived side by side with Peanuts and Dick Tracy and Blondie and the rest of them.
Now, do we think that just because we were the right age or because they were good and would have been good in any year?
That's part of it. Would they have been good in any year? They're still good today. Would they have worked 30, 40 years ago? No, because the attitudes were different, comics were different. But that said, it's harder nowadays because the real estate is given over to the old guys. The new ones really don't have much of a twist or anything to distinguish them other than they're trying to appeal to a particular demographic. The real action is online and has been for 10, 15 years with web comics and what people do, with the genre online. It's much more interesting than the papers.
Is Guilthorpe online?
I'm sure they're all online, yes. Mark Twain. Mark Twain was
the worst comic ever. Mark Twain
is. Well, you're thinking of the old Mark Twain where he would start to throw a punch on Monday and it might connect on a Friday. The new one is a little bit more. It's like Nancy. They took the old Nancy strip, which was and they made it into something a little bit.
My
more
audience
modern
is driving off the road. That you just upset the whole audience thinking about Nancy.
You brought up Kathy, for heaven's sakes, which hasn't been relevant in comics.
All right. Well, should we bomb? You're the host of the dining room. Should we bomb Iran or not?
I'm not even in the dining room. I would say that some message has to be sent. I mean, what do they have? They've got the Houthis with their flag that literally says upon it, "Death to America." I have always been of the opinion that people who say that in their founding documents and their bunting and the like ought to be believed at that.
The first Robert Kaplan book I read. Robert Kaplan was a guest on this show very often. Whenever he put out a book, was about a special force Green Beret landing in Yemen to help either the North Yemenis or the South Yemenis. That was a failed state before we invented the term failed state.
My father-in-law was shot down over Yemen many years. They treated him well and gave him back to the authorities. Oh, I'll tell that story someday. You had a caller previously who said, "No, Hugh, we should bomb the oil refinery," and you were saying, "No, we should bomb the." And it's like, do you want pizza or do you want dessert? The two are not mutually exclusive, but the effect on the oil prices, if we did bomb the Iranian facility, would probably double it.
I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor of finding out. I want to know about the transition to new media of the dining room. Actually, it's the diner is his podcast. I always say the dining room because it just annoys him and it gets a laugh occasionally. How is the transition going? How's the Substack taking out? Are people finding you and reading you?
They are. I've got thousands of subscribers, which is nice. And converting them to paying subscribers is, of course, the job that we all have online. But the diner is basically an extension of the radio show that I did starting in 1997 in this market. And it was an extension of a piece that I started writing for the college paper in 1981. So these ideas have all been part of a constellation that have been going on.
I got a quick question for you. A publisher called my agent and wants a book proposal. I haven't written a book since 2016 because the ROI is so low. Would you write a book now? Have you written a book since the last book you wrote?
As a matter of fact, I decided not to. I decided to do them online and charge for that because the last time I tried to get a book through the young women who live 6 to a room in Williamsburg and run the publishing industry and vet the manuscripts, I had a very difficult time trying to take my sensibility and say, no, I think this will still sell. The woke market is not exactly.
But that's all dead. I mean, when a guy reaches out to me after 10 years for a book, I think maybe publishing's falling apart. Do you think that might be the case?
Do a book on real estate and call it, if it's not cheap, they can't close.
That's pretty good. You have to know Hugh Hewitt to get that one. Well done, Lilacs. Well played, Mr. Bond. Lilacs.com. Fan of Kathy. From the Times of Israel. Always check the Times of Israel. Hamas calls on friendly countries to pressure the United States government into halting its ally Israel's renewed airstrikes on Gaza. Quote, "We call on friendly countries to pressure the U.S. administration to halt this aggression and genocidal war against defenseless civilians," the Palestinian Islamist terror movement said, which has not yet responded militarily to the strikes. Friendly countries. Bueller?
There really aren't any.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Hamas-friendly countries. Are they going to say, I guess, Iran?
I guess they botched the translation, which should have meant free the hostages.
Yeah, Bueller. Hey, Bueller. I know Ben Stein. Ben Stein's a friend of mine. And I wonder if it's going to be on his tombstone somewhere. Ben Stein. Bueller? I want to close by playing a little bit of J.D. Vance on border security, cut number 8.
Last month, migrant crossings were down 94% to their lowest number all time, and that happened just in 2 months of serious border enforcement. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, last month, for the first time in over a year, the majority of job gains went to American citizens born on U.S. soil, and that's important. For the first time in over a year, the majority of job creation actually went to American citizens.
President Trump has regained control of the border. That does not mean that conservatives are indifferent to people who live south of the border. We are not. I am asking you to be generous. Please step up and support Food for the Poor. Every Lent, I run a campaign begging especially Roman Catholics like me. For $100 or $200 or $300, it costs $100 for the good priests and pastors of El Salvador to feed one young student for an entire year at school. $100 for a student. So you'll give that $100 now, and you'll pay it now, and you'll feel it now, and you won't use it now. But for the rest of the year, at any time you'll think, you know what? The kid's going to eat today because I gave to Food for the Poor. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. It says Feed Their Future. Or you can send my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555, 51555. You can do it the old-fashioned way and call Food for the Poor at 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Or go to HughHewitt.com.